Hi folks, I want to talk today about these three terms, registration, subscription, and membership, and why they're so important for publishers. So the challenge today, as most publishers know, is that search traffic is declining because AI is just giving an answer. Used to be you could rely on Google to send you a bunch of traffic, but now Google just answers the question and people don't come to your website as much. So a common response is for publishers to build and control their own audiences. How are you going to get people to come back tomorrow? And the real secret here is if you don't own the audience, somebody else will. So how do we use these tools, registration, subscription, membership, to accomplish that goal? Now, I'd like you to think about these words in terms of engagement. How engaged is the customer with your brand when they register? How engaged are they when they subscribe? And how engaged are they when they're a member? Now, in the publishing world, I think we rank them pretty much that way. Register is the least engagement, subscribe is middle, member is top. I'm not sure that's exactly true in terms of the way people outside of our organizations think about it. If you look at it from a higher perspective, we don't want to be using inside baseball language here. There's the way we understand it, there's the way marketing tries to sell it, and there's the way the customers understand these words. So let's dive in for a minute to these concepts and how the customer might understand the word. Registration is an administrative thing. It's being accurately recorded in a system. You register to vote, you register your vehicle, you register a domain name. If you have a drone, you register it with the FAA, right? So registration has to do with being accurately recorded in a system. There really isn't a whole lot of engagement with registration. That's a publishing take on the word. In the real world and in the world outside publishing, registration is just an administrative thing, trying to get it accurately recorded. Maybe you have to register for a conference. There's a little bit of a relationship there, but it's not really a relationship thing. Subscription is I pay to get uninterrupted service of something that I value. Amazon has been pushing subscriptions to, vitamins and other kinds of things that you need to buy on a regular basis, razor blades or the water filter for your refrigerator, right? And obviously magazines and Netflix and things like that. But subscription has become a much broader term. People have glommed on to the concept of recurring revenue through subscriptions and tried to apply it all over the place. And you probably know that many people are sick of subscriptions. There's a lot of subscription fatigue. I was playing poker with some friends, and one guy was complaining about not making enough money, and almost everybody was saying, "How many subscriptions do you have?" Because we have Spotify and Netflix and all the Paramount Plus and Apple Plus, and a zillion subscriptions, and people are getting sick of it. Now subscription in the public mind seems to imply a trap that you can't get out of, right? It's something they're trying to trick you into a small payment that just keeps going that you forget about. Oh yeah, that just happens every month. That's what people think of with subscription. Now for membership, you think of belonging. You identify, you're part of the group to some extent. The gym, you're a member of the gym. Do you identify with those people? Some people do, some people don't. Maybe it depends on whether you're an extrovert or an introvert. You're a member of a political party. You're a member of Sam's Club, right? That's a membership warehouse. You're a member of a country club or a church. So membership does seem to have more of this connection. I identify. I'm part of this group. I'm in a bowling league. I'm a member of the such and such bowling league. So that's kind of the way the public views those three terms. Now, I wouldn't think of them as pricing models. I would think of them as relationship models. Register means access. Subscription means ongoing value. And membership means identity. So you just use those as kind of working concepts in your brain as you work through how you can apply these concepts to your publication. The key thing is you can't just call something a membership and get the psychological benefits of membership. There has to be a match between what you're calling it, what you're promising, and what you're delivering. Now, In the publishing world, the presumed flow, speaking from the perspective of like a website, it's you have anonymous users, 50% of whom are bots, but you have anonymous users. You try to get them to register, they give you an email address, right? And then you try to get them to subscribe, and then you try to get them to become a member. That's the way, that's kind of the funnel of engagement, the way a publisher sees it. Now, that's a great funnel. I'm just not sure those are the right words to be used in each one of those cases. So think about that. Think about whether you're communicating to the customer what they really want. So is register really what you want? Maybe it's sign up. Maybe it's get weekly value, get daily value. Focus it on a benefit to the person who's giving you their email address. If there's no exchange of value, why should they give you their email address? They know you're just going to spam them, right? So make sure that you're not using words just because that's the way we talk in publishing. There are expectations and there are obligations. For registration, the user expects to get something. They expect convenience, they expect access. Maybe they want to get your daily email. Maybe they want to be able to view more pages on your website. What they don't want is to be spammed. They don't want you to annoy them. A subscriber wants regular value. So deliver the magazine on time and deliver it consistently and provide consistent value in every issue, right? I mean, you could say, well, this magazine's good every once in a while. I'll just go down to the newsstand and buy the February issue and the November issue because those are good. But the rest of them, I don't want a subscription because the rest of the issues aren't very good. So a subscription implies consistent value. You're consistently delivering on that promise. A member, they want identity and participation. I said here, give me a role. I'm not sure that's the right word. Make me feel like I fit in, I guess. Make me feel like I'm with birds of a feather, right? I'm with other people that are like me. All right. You don't want to call a newsletter sign up a membership. You don't want to call a paywall community. You don't want to call, I get to take all your data and put it in my CDP and do all this spooky stuff and call that a relationship. Make sure that you have an understanding of what you're trying to do, what your strategy is, but also what the benefit to the user is. They don't want their data mined unless it gives them some value. For example, I don't have a dog, so I'm perfectly happy with a service that doesn't try to sell me dog food, right? So I want them to have that data. If I did have a boat, I might, well, I used to, I wish they would tell me about boats, right? So there's a point at which the company having your data is actually a benefit. You need to focus on what that exchange of value is between you and the customer and how you're making their life better by taking whatever it is you're taking from them, their email address, their money once a month or once a year or whatever it is, make sure there's a fair exchange of value. Now, if we were to be cynical and look at this, a lot of publishers think they have an audience, but all they really have is reach. They reach a lot of people, but they're not really their audience. They think they have a product, but all they have is content. What I mean by that is a product focuses on a solution, right? Content is just content. They think they have loyalty, but what they really have is traffic. So you should second guess the words that you use about your own business. When people talk about an audience, say, well, wait a minute. How do we know? Are they really an audience? What defines an audience? How do we know that they're an audience and they're not just people we have touch with? All right. If there's no value, there's no registration. If there's no trust, there's no subscription. If there's no identity, there's no membership. Keep those things in mind. As I said, rules, they're suggestions, ways to think about these concepts. All right, I came up with this little 2x2x2 matrix to explain reach, control, and friction. What I mean by reach is how far your message gets, right? If you have a very small community, you don't have much reach. If you're getting out and people all over the world or all over the country know you, you have a lot of reach. By publisher control, I mean two things. One is you're controlling the relationship, not Amazon or Google or Apple. So Low publisher control would be one of those situations where somebody has a subscription through Apple to your magazine, where you're not getting the subscriber data. They, they get your magazine and you get some money, but you don't have control of the relationship. The other kind of control that I'm envisioning here is like how much data you get on the customer. Are they just anonymous visitors and you're sort of getting third-party ad information, or are you actually getting customer information out of them? That's more to the publisher control side of things. Friction, everybody knows what that is. You try to get somebody to register for your email newsletter and you ask them their first name, their last name, their middle name, their birthday, their mother's name. Right? Nobody wants to do all that. They want to give you maybe first name, email address. That's it. That's low friction. Now, you might think low friction is always a good idea. It's not. What if you are running a country club in the Hamptons? You might want high friction. You might want people to have to be qualified before they get into your service. You might think you always want to have high reach, but not necessarily. Once again, the country club in the Hamptons, you don't want everybody in the world. Publisher control can go along with these things. Like the country club in the Hamptons, low reach, high publisher control, high friction. But then an ad-supported website would be low publisher control, high reach, low friction. Anyway, use this model as a way to think through different strategies and for different publications, and which one are you trying to do, and is it consistent? Are you doing that consistently throughout your messaging, throughout the way you're providing service to your users? More reach means less control, usually. More control means more friction, usually, and friction requires value. Okay, so let's go through some examples of people who've done this well. The New York Times, they had a bit of a stumble in like the 2000s, but recently they've done really, really well. They've realized that they're not just the news. A lot of news organizations flatter themselves into thinking that people want the news. Sometimes they do. When I was a kid, the newspaper wasn't just news. It was the classified ads. It was the TV guide. It was the funny papers, right? There was all this different stuff in the newspaper. And then the internet sliced and diced all that up, moved those pieces everywhere else. And the concept of buying a newspaper just for news was a new thing. You didn't used to buy it just for news. Well, the New York Times finally figured that out and realized that they need to focus on bundles of daily habits, right? They're not trying to take a subscription product and improve it. They're trying to make a completely new product. And it was, how can we get things that people are addicted to on a daily basis, like Wordle? I don't do it. A lot of people are, and they're addicted to the thing. A cooking app, product reviews. So they're bundling all these services together way beyond just news, and they've done very well with it. Now, a completely different approach is taken by The Guardian. Free content, voluntary membership. So a lot of people say that the fix to the problem of the anonymous internet and loss of traffic and all is the subscription fix. The Guardian said, no, we don't want to do that. We're not going to charge for access. We're just going to ask people to support us, which is a pretty bold move. They said independent journalism is worth supporting. So in the subscription model, I pay, I get access. In their model, I believe, so I support. Different way of parsing the problem. Stratechery. You probably haven't heard of Stratechery. It's the progenitor of Substack. Readers create a relationship directly with the content owner. Basically, Stratechery proved the model that Substack built. So Substack built a whole platform around what Stratechery showed, which was the direct relationship was the core of the value. It shifts from institution-driven to personality, individual-driven, and it removes the friction between the writer and the reader. So it monetizes trust in a person. It's a very different kind of a model. So between the two, Stratechery was just a product and Substack is a platform. They both rely on a relationship between the writer and the reader, but Stratechery was focused on one particular thing, and Substack is a direct relationship with multiple different authors. The idea is expertise is what sells. Okay. Stratechery was the pioneer. Substack built the road. Now, The Athletic has another interesting model, ad-supported sports. That's what they used to be, ad-supported sports. They went to paid subscriptions, no ads. Very deep coverage, very high quality writing, and almost everything subscriber only. Now, compare that, we're going to get later on to Sports Illustrated, who fumbled the ball here. Uh, I'm not, I don't follow sports writing that much, but people who do really want deep analysis. They want to know what's going on with the draft and all that. And The Athletic does that. Subscriptions work when the content is highly valued and indispensable. Harvard Business Review took a slightly different model. They want a reg wall, you have to register, and then they sort of condition you in an onboarding process to convert you into a subscriber. So the idea is you register, but now they're going to have a complicated strategy to get you involved with their content to such a point that you want to become a subscriber. So registration is just the entryway, the entrance into becoming a subscriber. It's a good model. Patreon is sort of similar to Substack or Stratechery. They're trying to build a deeper fan relationship with membership. Now, I don't think Patreon is doing particularly well right now, but they were doing well before, turning the tip jar into this ongoing relationship where the fan feels connected with the content creator. They might get the podcast, a day earlier. They might get everybody else gets a 45-minute podcast, they get a 60-minute podcast, that sort of thing. You're creating a better relationship with the customer. Now, those were the good examples. Let's look at some bad ones. The LA Times, I think they saw what the New York Times were doing. They said, they made bundles, but they didn't really make a bundle. They just took a subscription and added a bunch of coupons to it. There wasn't any identity, there wasn't any participation. They just kind of called it membership without really doing anything to make it a membership. So don't have a mismatch between what you think you're offering and what you're actually delivering. Mike shifted from ad-supported to subscription, but they had nothing that was unique. It was all content you could get elsewhere. People won't pay for what they can get for free. Pardon my voice. I think I woke up with a little bit of a cold. Facebook, I'm really happy about this one because for so long, the tech model has been all your customers become our customers. And publishers have been falling for it left and right. Finally, they didn't. And this one is really encouraging. Facebook was trying to get people to build their subscription business on Facebook's platform. But then the publisher isn't the owner anymore. It doesn't own the relationship. They get revenue, but they lost the relationship, and that's bad. You don't want a situation where you're building your relationship with your customer through somebody else's platform. Apple News, this one's weird. They bundled everything together into one big buffet, but there's no clear rhyme or reason to it. Like, why do I want this big collection of news? And the reason I think it's weird is because isn't that what Netflix does? And Netflix is very successful. Netflix has all these different things, TV shows and movies and documentaries, and there are short ones and there are long ones, and there's comedies and there's drama. It's a buffet. And what I see in my Netflix feed is completely different from what you see in your Netflix feed. It worked there, but it didn't work for Apple News. And I think that's an interesting question for maybe a psychologist to dive into. Why is news different than video in that sort of regard? Sports Illustrated, you know what they did? They started hiring AI to pretend to be sports writers and write a bunch of slop, and they totally destroyed their relationship with their customers who felt that they were betrayed, that these weren't really sports writers. This was AI writing stuff. So when you break your promise to your readers, your churn accelerates. All right, BuzzFeed tried to build membership on an audience that had no identity. Membership, remember, is like birds of a feather. People like me, common interests, all that. The BuzzFeed people were, I just came here for a quiz. I don't have anything in common with these other people around here. There's no reason to have a membership. So there was a huge mismatch between the concept of membership and what they were trying to build. And I can see how this happens, right? You're sitting around in the strategy meeting and somebody says, what we need to move people from registered to members. Let's make a membership. But they don't think enough about what a membership is and what they have to deliver. And that's the key insight here. Gannett had registration walls with no clear benefit. It was basically, we're going to do what we've been doing forever, but now you have to register. And there's no trade-off. There's no exchange of value. You can't do that. When you're going to put more friction in the way of the customer, a reg wall or whatever it is, there has to be a benefit to them to do that. All right, CNN. Remember CNN Plus? They just thought they were going to build a higher value service with a closer relationship with the customers, but nobody felt that it was anything better than they already had. Like they already had all this stuff. You're just bundling it and charging me more, and that doesn't fly. So the common thread, registration, subscription, membership work when there's a clear value, the relationship is real, if there even should be a relationship. Remember that sometimes I don't want a relationship for certain things, like for buying vitamins. I don't want a relationship. And then for identity, if it's going to be a membership, there has to be some sense of commonality. I'm I'm with people that I am like. So if your promise doesn't match, if your product doesn't match the promise, it fails. So don't just think anonymous, registered subscriber, member, as if this is some sort of a path you want to guide everybody through. First say, are we actually delivering something at each one of those stages? What's the different emotional dynamic that takes place with register, with subscriber, with member? And are we fulfilling that? Is there a fair exchange of value? So that is that's registration, membership, and subscription. I help publishers with technology problems. If you want a sanity check or a second opinion, give me a call. There's my contact information. I hope this was enjoyable and informative, and please reach out if you have any more questions. Thank you very much.